23 ABC and the Delano Police Department bring you Ep.4 of Breaking the Cycle of Gang Violence.
This week, we're talking to Sergeant Mario Nunez and getting the law enforcement perspective, the challenges they face solving a case, the patterns and signs parents should look out for, and how they believe we can break the cycle of gang violence. We hope you'll join us. Welcome back to Breaking the Cycle of Gang Violence. This is episode 4, and over the past 3 episodes, we've talked to family members who have lost people to gang violence. This week, we are shifting over to the law enforcement perspective. So I'm going to turn things over to Joe for a little introduction on our guest today.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? Hopefully everybody's well. Today, our guest is Sergeant Mario Nunez. He's from the Delano Police Department. Sergeant Nunez is a 25-year veteran, and he's also a local boy, graduated from Delano High. His past assignments have included being a canine handler, a narcotic detective, SWAT operator, and a field training officer. Currently, he's in charge of our investigations unit, and he's also an advisor for our Delano Police Explorers. So, Sergeant, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Did he miss anything in your background?
No, we're good.
Okay. You have a lengthy background, though.
I do.
Yeah, a lot of time in law enforcement. Can you talk to me first about what you do like now, like on a day-to-day basis? What is your job?
The investigation supervisor. So when I come in the mornings, I review what happened the previous day. Some of the stuff that we review is cases from the night before, or if I got any information from any outside agencies. I review any emails or texts that I get from outside agencies and kind of look at our workload for the day, of anything new that we need to work on now.
How, on a slight sidebar before we really dive into the topic of the episode, how do you guys prioritize as far as what gets precedent?
It's hard to say because some days it can be a burglary that we had 4 or 5 burglaries that night, or it could have been a homicide, or it could be an outside agency is from anywhere within the United States. Hey, we need something in your area. Can you guys deal with this for us today, now?
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about handling gang-related cases in general. What sort of approach do you guys take, and what goes into working on those?
All our cases are pretty much handled about the same, with the exception there's a little bit more detail on a gang case. Gang cases take a little bit more homework. You have to really build a gang case. Not only do you have to build your case on the crime that was committed, but you have to build your case on the gang and the gang involvement and what influence the gang had on this crime.
Are there certain like telltale signs that it likely is leaning toward a gang sort of situation, a gang incident?
Good 90% of the time on the initial call or respond to the call or information we get from the call, pretty good chance we already know if it's going to be gang related or not. A lot of times we think it might be gang related and turns out not to be. A person who was a victim of that crime may be a gang member, but the crime itself may not be gang related.
So what are some of the like telltale signs, or what is it that you guys notice right away that it could potentially be a gang related incident?
So as far as the investigation portion of it, when we get our call out or we respond to a call, a lot of times we have names, addresses, what circumstances are behind it. Sometimes just the name alone, knowing that that person we're going to go deal with or is a victim or a suspect, what their criminal history is, we kind of have an idea of what's going on. Some of the initial statements that we'll get from a patrol officer that gets there, he or she will tell us, hey, this is what it was, and this was a statement made by the suspect or the victim. And it opens up our eyes to what's there. So then we change a little bit more on what resources we bring in to deal with not only the gang portion, but the crime itself.
So let's talk about that. Let's say you guys are getting called out to a scene, right? So the initial officers go and respond to the 911 call, show up, and then I assume you guys get called. Can you kind of take me through what that's like, the step-by-step process for you?
So officers get dispatched to, we'll use a homicide or a shooting. They respond to the shooting, they call us out, person doesn't look good, or it's major injuries. I get a quick briefing from my supervisor will call me, give me a quick briefing. I in turn will call the on-duty supervisor and get more details of what happened. find out who the primary officer is and get more details from him. As I'm waiting in between calls, I'm actually starting to call officers out. We have a rotating detective division, so I'll call out the guys and say good morning, it's me again, and we have a little chat in the mornings, and the weather's nice and it's fresh out here.
It's
Kinda get
more
everybody-
like a good morning sunshine at 3 a.m. call.
Trying to wake them up so they're awake when I start getting into details, and they're like, "Oh my God, stop calling me right now." They're like, "Give me 1 minute, and let them wake up," and then
Right.
I go into the details I have. I said there will be an email coming out, more details. By the time you get up and running, I'll have more for you. But as of right now, we have whatever the crime is. We're responding to this location, and you will be the primary officer. You'll be the secondary.
And so you kind of touched on it. Calls are coming in at really any and every time because there's no set time for when crime could happen.
Correct.
Can you talk about that sort of impact on your life and I'm assuming the other officers' lives too?
As far as at home, my wife's used to it. She said, "Hey, your girlfriends are calling." If I missed a phone call, she says your girlfriends are calling, or I don't know who it is. Somebody's looking for you. You need to answer this phone. If I miss it, most of the times the guys are, "Hey, are you awake?" I said, "Yeah, I was waiting for your call." But it's, I guess you get used to it. Everybody gets used to it, so it's not.
Has there been any, like you've been out somewhere where you've been called out or anything like that?
I've actually been at dinners with the family, and our food shows up and gets set on the table in front of us, and the phone will ring, and my wife will look at me. She goes, "It's family time." I said, "Yeah, but look who's calling." So if I know who's going to be calling me, I'll answer it. And if I get up from the table, my wife knows that boxes stuff up, he's not going to eat.
Wow, that's quite the lifestyle though, right?
It is. It is. It's sometimes it's challenging, but I'm fortunate that my wife is very understanding, and my kids have grown up their entire life with this, so they know it, they understand it. Even family members, I could be in the backyard on my on-call weekend, and my phone will ring and it said, "Hey, it's your work," because I could be doing something, I could barbecue or be in the pool, and the phone goes off. I said, "Look at it. Who is it?" And they'll tell me who it is, and like, "Oh, you're not going to be here any longer."
So you just drop everything basically at that point.
Yes.
And have to go. Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you were talking a little bit about building the cases when it is a gang-related case. Can you talk about what sort of things you guys are looking for and how you actually build that case?
There's a lot of criteria that's required for a gang case. Under Penal Code 186.22, you have to prove that the person is a gang member, is a known gang member, or shows telltale signs of a gang member. So if we get the call out and some of the information we're getting initially sounds like it's going to be a gang case, we also call out 2 gang investigators, and they come out and they work on the gang portion of it, and the other investigators work on the crime portion of it.
So what are some of those signs though that, I don't know what the right terminology is, but helps label them and prove that they are a gang member?
Corporal Madrigal may know a little bit more of some of these. I'm not too familiar with a lot of them, but some of them are their dress, if they claim to be a gang member, tattoos, their affiliations.
Self-admit, locations where they're hanging out. It could be various things. It has to be more than one. So it can't just be like, oh, well, Jessica's hanging out at the corner of 7th and Fremont. That doesn't make you a gang member. But if Jessica's hanging out at the corner of, we'll just say 7th and Fremont, for example, and you're wearing gang dress attire that we know, whatever certain color, tattoos, and also if you self-admit that you're associated or you are a gang member. Because most of the times they will tell you.
Oh, they will.
They will.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting to hear. Okay, so throughout your many years in law enforcement, are there any particular cases that have stood out to you or stuck with you, and why?
There's one, and it's a recent case from 2016. It's not a homicide or a shooting or any kind of major crime involved, but there is a Tessie Mongohig, the missing elderly Filipino female.
I covered that story. Yeah.
The big thing behind that, I'm a mama's boy, so I don't know what it would feel like to not know where my mom's at or what's happening with my mom, and knowing my mom has an issue, some kind of medical issues going on. And I think that one stuck with me because we worked a lot, nonstop, probably 2 weeks straight, every day, as late as 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We'd have some other guys come in and cover for 4 or 5 hours to hold areas for us, and then we'd come right back and work on that case. And following leads all up and down the state of California, all over Kern County, uh, walking areas up against the mountains, walking orchards, grape fields, open fields, having officers in helicopters and airplanes, trying to find her. And at one point, with Tessie, there was she was seen. We thought we had her. We thought we had her in a orange orchard, and everybody was describing her clothing and everything. It matched. And something that we didn't put out with the media at that time was how she would layer her clothes. That way, if something came in, we would know that this is a good one. And multiple calls were coming in from that area. We have an older female Filipina, and she's got layered sweaters on. She has a lot of sweaters on, and she's just walking out in the street waving at everybody. So we get to the area, and we pretty much put a perimeter around this area. Again, helicopters and quads and law enforcement from both Kern County and Delano Police, and she was not there.
And for those who don't know, Tessie was dealing with dementia and was living with her daughters, if I'm remembering correctly, and they had some sort of device that helped locate her, but she was able to get out of the house at some point and didn't have her device on.
Correct. She actually had initially she had a watch as a GPS device, so they can monitor her in case she did get out of the house. And she was always washing dishes or washing. She damaged it, so they bought her a necklace. And for whatever reason, she took off her necklace that day.
And she's still missing.
She is.
Yeah. I want to talk about other investigations. A lot of times with gang violence, from a reporter's standpoint, it tends to be very violent scenes. So I assume as an investigator, you're walking into these very graphic, violent scenes. How do you deal with that on a day-to-day basis?
I want to say that you get hard at it, but you don't. You don't get a hard heart. It affects you emotionally. There's been times where I pulled up to the crime scene, and the recent one, a few officers came up to me on the double homicide of the 11 and 12-year-old females, and when I'm getting the briefing, both officers got emotional, and I asked them, "Hey, just go sit in the car. I'll come back. I'll come back." And waited 45 minutes for them to compose themselves, and they came back, and it didn't help much. They came back, were able to get the information out that I needed, but it does affect you emotional. I mean, I've had officers that on many crimes, I said, call your wife, call your kids, hear your kids, and make sure that you're good, and then come back. We're going to do this.
Yeah, I've had times where I had a really, really tough call, and I was like fairly new. I think I was a couple months on. Lost a child. I don't know if I think it was like a SIDS death, but I tried to bring that baby back, and that got to me. And I remember the sergeant came to me and he's like, "Hey, it's okay to get emotional, but they need Officer Madrigal right now," and you kind of snap out of it, and you have to deal with the call. You have to deal with it. You have to be strong. So not that it makes you less immune, I guess, but it's just you learn to control it, and you learn to deal with it in private, which.
And a lot of officers do deal with it in private. They'll go, "Sergeant, I need it. I'll be back." And they give you that look, and you understand that look. Okay, go. Go deal with what you need to deal with, and when you're ready, come on back. But like Corporal Madrigal says, that yeah, I need Corporal Madrigal, the officer, to come back because we have to deal with this. This is what we do. And the guys come back, and then afterwards we do work things out amongst each other, and if we need counseling, we go seek it.
Yeah, because I don't think that's the part that a lot of people think of, right? Especially in this day and age, we have a sort of an atmosphere where there's a lot of tension with law enforcement, right? Where people, the general public, doesn't necessarily trust law enforcement. So I don't think that's the side that people ever think of, is that you guys are real humans and are witnessing things that most people hopefully will never have to witness, but you're seeing it consistently and having to deal with it too.
Oh yeah, the emotions that everybody goes through is just like anybody else. It's other than this is what we do for a living.
I know in another law enforcement agency here, I did a ride along with like their gang unit investigations and things like that, and they were talking about having contact with so many people consistently. Right, you run into sort of sometimes the same criminals over and over again, and then there ends up being an incident where that person that you just ran into last week for a search or an arrest or whatever it may be ends up being the victim in a crime. Have you run into anything like that?
It happens all the time, at least on a weekly basis. One week they're a suspect or somebody contacted, and the next week they are a victim.
What goes through your head? Because they've tried to explain that to me, because I'm trying to think of just, bumping into somebody that I see on a consistent basis and then thinking that the next week, whether I had a friendship with them or not, that they're gone.
It's you kind of, I can't say it's a full friendship, but it's a good acquaintance, somebody you talk to and you get along with, and you're on different sides of the law, but you get along and you respect each other on that, and you try to work with them and explain to them, hey, your lifestyle, what you're doing is not going to work. And I don't think there's anybody or anything out here we can do or say that's going to change anybody. When that person is ready to change their lifestyle, they will change. But you can always be there for them and give them advice, not force somebody into changing, but give them advice and explain to them. That helps when you go back and they're a victim, that they want to help themselves. And a lot of times it takes for them to be a victim, for them to want to change themselves.
Not necessarily a victim, but I think it's just a major event that happens in their life. Kind of like with when we talked to Mike Salazar earlier in the podcast, it was a major event that happened to him, and that definitely is the change that they need. Unfortunately, we want to get to the point where it doesn't take a major event for them to change their lives. We want to touch them in a different way and bring them back.
Yeah, you kind of talked about starting that conversation early on, so that way if and or when they get to that point, they feel like they can trust you. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's something tangible that maybe people in the community, family members could be able to do. What are you saying, and what are you getting to or hoping to get through to them?
So what a lot of people don't understand it, what we work on and we push really hard here, and we've been pushing for many years in Delano, and I know a lot of agencies do this, is the community-oriented policing and problem solving, where you get out of your car, walk up to somebody and talk to them. They're having a barbecue, wave hi. You get called, you see these on social media, police officers get dispatched to a call, loud music, and they go there and they dance with people and say, hey, the reason we're here is this, but you guys need to turn it down. They take a different approach on how they're doing it. They befriend people so they can understand that we have a job to do, but you're ready. And that's what we do here in Delano. We get out of our cars, talk to people, see somebody at the store, get out, go talk to them for no reason. How you guys doing? Everything good? It's hot, What are you barbecuing? Stuff like that. And you build that relationship, and people are more ample to talk to you and understand your point of view.
And I think that has gone a long way, because before, when you would go talk to somebody, say like at a street or anywhere, they look at you like, okay, what do I do? Why do you want to talk to me? I was like, no, I just want to talk. Like, how's your day going? What are you and your family up to? What's going on this weekend? Or how are the Raiders gonna do this week? I said it. Raiders. So,
Wait, who's not a, sorry, sidebar, who's not a fan, or who is a fan? Are you both fans?
he's a Rams fan.
Raider fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I get it. Okay.
So it's come a long way, because I feel like now we get people wave at us, which is kind of cool, because we didn't get that before, or they would wave at us with one finger. But now it's like they use their whole hand, and so they talk to us. They come up to us and hey, my kid, this is going on with my kid. Can you go say happy birthday, or can you do whatever? And we're like, yeah, sure. Like we don't.
And it's the gang members, and it's
Yeah.
the people that bad people in our town are the ones that are calling us. I need help with my kid. They still have that lifestyle, but I want help with the kids. Or like he says, how the Raiders doing? I roll my window down on a group of gang members who are all wearing 49er stuff. I was like, really? 49ers can't even win a game, and we'll build dialogue based on football, and you're okay with that.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so you're building this rapport. Well, let me ask this before I move on. Have you had that sort of rapport where it was something just, popping by saying hello, and then you ended up having to work with them on an incident. Maybe they were a victim in something, whether it was gang related or not.
Yes, a lot. It happens at least once a week.
Really?
Yes.
So are they calling you specifically after meeting you?
Believe it or not, they are. I get a
Really?
lot of phone calls. I don't hide where I live. I don't hide my number. People have my number. They can call me anytime they want. They know where I'm at the church. They can come see me at church. And sometimes they'll call me or they'll find ways to get a hold of me directly if they don't have my numbers. And a lot of time people will call in crimes to me specifically, something that we're working on. And it helps out a lot. It builds that relationship.
Why do you think they feel comfortable doing that with you?
Honestly, I believe it's because I got out of my car. I started talking to people and motivating them to talk back. It had to, every contact with law enforcement, if I get sent to your house, it's negative. It's never nothing positive. So a lot of us took it upon ourselves, including Corporal Madrigal, when he first started working, that you need to get out there and talk to these people. You know, not everybody is bad. They live in a bad situation or they are part of something bad, but they're not bad people. Treat them like people, and if you treat them like people, they will treat you like people back. A lot of it helped too is I worked in corrections before I became a police officer, and there's a difference on respect. If you learn respect, to respect them, they'll respect you back, and they'll take care of you.
And I think it's exactly what he said, because when I first started here, I wasn't get out of my car and let's go talk to people and say hello, because that to me wasn't police work. To me, police work was chasing bad guys, chasing them down or in a pursuit, because that's what I learned, from the TV shows that I would watch early on in my life, which helped me realize what I wanted to be. Um, but later on, obviously from watching Sergeant Nunez, I saw that and I was like, why is he talking to that gangster? I was like, they're our enemies. And they were being respectful with each other, talking about football, whatever the case may be. And you see the effects of it later on, not necessarily right there. I mean, you see the conversation and you're like, man, I was like, is Sergeant Nunez an undercover gangster? I was like, why is he talking to this guy? But later on, you see the effects, because if a major crime happened, guess who they're talking to? Because he has that trust. And as a young officer, watching him do that, you kind of like pick up on that. And I was like, okay, let's have conversations. So you make a traffic stop on a gangster and you start talking to him, and you don't necessarily have to give him a ticket, because that conversation that you're having and trying to build the trust and trying to build the respect or whatever it is going to work out in the long run. So if you don't cite him, it's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah, do we want to touch on that a little bit more? Because I don't want anybody listening to this to think that you're just saying, oh, it's okay, we'll let him go on his merry way. It may not be something that is that major that you stopped him for, him or her.
Yeah, as law enforcement officer, we have full discretion whether we cite or not.
And our job is not to write tickets. Our job is to enforce. If the mere fact that you pull somebody over and you brought it to their attention and they learn from it, that's good enough. You don't have to write them a ticket.
Yeah. So, for example, if I pull somebody over and I give them, hey, I pulled you over for running a stop sign. If they're like, oh my God, I didn't see it, and it's genuine to me, they learned a lesson, because they're like, okay, I didn't see that, and I need to start paying attention. If it's like excuses like, oh, well, I'm running late or whatever it is, they knew the stop sign was there and they just continued going.
When you pull somebody over for whatever vehicle code violations or whatever you stop them for, and a lot of people talk themselves into a ticket, and our job is not to write a ticket, our job is to enforce. So if you explain to them, this is why I stopped you, and you kind of get candid with them and build a little conversation to see what's really going on. People always say, you don't have to answer the cops, so you just say yes or no and give me your driver's license and am I detained? Or part of the questioning we're asking is, what was the real reason behind you running the stop sign, or you speeding, or what's the effect? And if we don't build that dialogue, we don't know what's really going on. So we're just going to take it on face value. And if, like I explained earlier, you're going to talk yourself into a ticket.
So sometimes it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a conversation.
Correct. We're just building rapport. I can almost tell you right now, most cops, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a citation.
So let's talk a little bit more about how that rapport has helped you out. Do you have specific instances or stories where it's come back to help serve a better purpose?
I do. I have several. I have one I can't remember how many years ago, but I was a new supervisor, and it was on an Easter Sunday, and we were within our here in Delano. There's two families. They were having an ongoing kind of like arguing, going back and forth. They weren't getting along. The kids weren't getting along. The adults and the older people in the family were getting along, and it was within our Black community. And get dispatched out there. One of the guys calls me, "Hey, Sarge, there's a lot of people out here, and it's getting really, really bad, and they're screaming and yelling." As I pull up into the neighborhood, I recognize mostly everybody there, from the young ones all the way to the older ones, and I can see the look in the officers' faces because you see all these horror stories, the Rodney King, and now what you see is happening back east with the Floyd issues. And this was probably 15 years ago, and it looked like that. And that day we had Hispanic and white officers, and we had these two Black families that were arguing, and it looked bad. As I'm pulling up, fortunate for me, an elder female, Black female that I know very well for many years, she pulls up at the same time I do. She knew both sides of the families, and she gets out there and she starts yelling and screaming at everybody to get back in their houses. That's why our Black community has a bad reputation, and because of what we do and how we act. And she's yelling and screaming, and I took it as a candid, because I looked at the officers. They looked worried about how we're going to handle this. There was only 5 of us, I think, at that day, and there was probably every bit of 100.
Wow.
And this little old Black lady, Mrs. Ethel Pickering, she gets out. She's got to be at least 4'5", maybe. She's yelling and screaming at everybody, and everybody's like, they try to explain their side to Grandma. Everybody calls her Grandma. She says, "There is no excuse. Go home. It's over. We're barbecuing at the park. Go to the park. We're done." Everybody walked away, and I stood behind her. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." I'm yelling this, and everybody's looking at me laughing, and the officers are looking like, "What's wrong with him?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So everybody clears out. She goes, "We're having a barbecue at the park. You guys want to come down?" We drove down to the park. We went and had barbecue with them on an Easter Sunday.
Wow. Wow. And that's something that could have easily escalated, gotten out of control. You guys may have had to, if it got too crazy, use force, which then turns into something bigger, right? People end up getting upset. You guys didn't want to show up on Easter Sunday and do that either.
That's correct. It worked out, and it was funny. We talk about it afterwards, and it's funny. I even to this day, she and I speak about that incident all the time.
Oh, that is so funny. Wow. Yeah, and it's interesting. And there could have been tension between them and potentially violence. So that all calmed it down just off of some conversations. What sort of challenges do you face trying to solve cases, specifically ones that are gang related?
People want to cooperate. People just don't want to talk. In fear of retaliation, or just in general don't want to get involved. I'll give you 2 examples. On this double homicide, everything we've worked on with these 2 12-year-old little girls, we've had to really dig and kind of convince people into talking to us. Unlike we had a homicide in 2016 in a neighborhood, it was a gang related homicide. That entire neighborhood, from people driving by, from people from the schools, neighbors, everybody gave us very good information. We had a suspect name, a vehicle description, everything within about 15 minutes. And probably within about 40 minutes, that suspect was stopped and detained by Kern County Sheriff Department because we were able to get that information out quick. And that suspect was leaving town already.
Wow.
And we were able to catch him. Here recently, he took a plea bargain and was convicted of that homicide.
Yeah, also the Cody Harris case.
Correct.
Was the same way, where we relied primarily on witness statements.
For those who don't know that case, can you kind of give just a little summary of what happened?
Yeah, in November of 2013, Cody Harris and some friends were hanging out at Calibo Park. Cody Harris was approached by a gang member, and the gang member asked him if he gangbanged. Cody Harris said no, and there was some other words used. But at one point, the gangster pulled out a gun from his pocket and shot Cody Harris, killing him. Going down the line, there was witnesses that saw the killer The killer was actually part of a rampage. The days leading up to the murder, he was committed other shootings or and vehicle theft, and all those witnesses came forward and were able to identify the suspect, which incidentally led to him being arrested in actually San Bernardino County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you're saying that part of the challenge is getting people to just talk, right? Because they're afraid. So what can we do, or what do you normally do or say to help get those people to talk?
A lot of times it just depends on the neighborhood or who you're talking to. We just go by, hey, you don't go out there, hey, anybody see anything? Nobody says anything, we walk away, we don't. We go by, hey, anybody want to talk? This is my number, and you're barking out your phone number so everybody can, you say it over and over and over to the crowd. People are remembering this or texting. A lot of people are holding their phones up like videotaping, but they're writing your number down. You guys have any questions? We have our tip line. We give them the 661-721-3369. Call us on that. We don't have to talk here. We can talk later. I'll meet you in an orchard to talk. We don't care. Just call us. And a lot of people will talk to you there, and a lot of people will call you afterwards. We don't expect people to give us the whole story, but point us in the right direction. Like that case I was telling you, the homicide, we had the suspect within 45 minutes. They pointed the car, the direction, everything, and within a matter of 45 minutes, we had surveillance. We had all kinds of stuff showing the car leaving the area, who was driving it, where he was at, and the whole story behind it. And it worked out very good.
Yeah, and you were saying he was already on his way out of town.
Yes.
So if you didn't have that information, how much harder would that have made it for you?
Not knowing who he was, we potentially could have never known. He could have left our city and moved to another state or another city within California, or even gone to Mexico, and we have never known.
Is it beyond people just talking, and maybe this ties into it? Is it the fact that if it is gang related, people who may also be gang members, either on the opposing side, maybe want to get justice for themselves? Do you face that as well?
We do. You do hear some of the rumors of, it's okay, we know who it is, we'll deal with that person ourselves. But it doesn't stop the fact. We've been fortunate sometimes the kids are talking about it at home. Mom hears it. Mom will call us. Hey, I don't know what happened, but my son said that he heard that this and this and happened, and it's a hook for us, and we clamp onto that and we start digging into that, and if it works out, it's good. If it doesn't work out, then it could be somebody just talking, trying to make a name for themselves, and really not having any involvement.
I want to go back because you started talking about building a rapport with some of these people, so that if and or when they're ready to get out, that they feel like they could potentially talk to you, or they could seek help from somewhere else. Do you, first off, what do you think the community and or family members can do in order to also build that rapport?
Be involved in your kid's life. I coach various sports here in town, and unfortunately, a lot of the kids that grow up through different sporting programs end up being victims later. They get caught up or get attention from somebody else, and they get caught up. And going to these sporting events, there's times that we're renting vans to take the kids to the sporting events because parents don't go. They always have an excuse not to go. Even when we have local sporting events, you go there and the kids are looking for their parents in the stands, and parents aren't there. So there's no involvement from the parents. Something else is always more important. It's easier to give the kids to Mario or to the other coaches, and they're going to watch them for me on Saturday, and they have them on Friday night, and I can go do my business, and there's no involvement. I think parents need to get more involved in what their kids do. We can make every program, every after-school program, you name it, but if the parents aren't involved, it's just somebody to hang on to my kid until I come back.
What about for those parents who are maybe a single parent family and working, trying to survive? Maybe they have multiple children. What about for them? What would you say to those parents and or people who are around them?
And I've seen both sides of that. And, speaking mainly on football, which I coach football, we practice 5 days a week and we play on Saturdays. I know everybody doesn't work 6 days a week. I know everybody doesn't work till 8 o'clock at night. Some of these games are at 8 o'clock in the morning. If you work at night, you have the morning. You have to make an effort to come out and be with your kids. The kids look for their parents, look for that home support. And if you're not there, I don't care how many programs we build or how much money we throw at this. If the parents don't get involved, it's not going to change.
Do you feel like part of it is if those parents aren't there, that the kids are then seeking the attention from somewhere else?
They are. Corporal Madrigal can attend to this. Some of these kids will come up to you and they'll start calling you dad or uncle, and they build that relationship that, I'd rather hang out with you all day and say, I have this tournament this weekend and I'm going to be there all day because not only are our games, I'm going to stay and watch the rest of the games. Or it's okay, I'd rather hang out with you because if I go home, I'm just going to be sitting there because nobody's home.
And so that in your opinion is what really starts moving that cycle into the potential to allow them to get into trouble really eventually.
Correct, because if they don't hang out with you, they're not hanging around at home. There's the kid whose family is potentially involved in crime or in the gang, and they're like, yeah, bring him over, hang out here at the house. And the kid starts living that lifestyle, knowing that lifestyle, and seeks comfort in that.
Now, do you think that this is something that can be taught to the parents? Like, spend more time with your kid. Like, how do we get the parents to get there to that place where they want to spend time with their kids?
I don't know how. I mean, for me, it was we take care of our kids and you take them. And money shouldn't be an issue because there's a lot of programs here that are free. But parents need to just get involved, need to care and be a parent. Stop looking for somebody else or stop looking for excuses. Start being a parent. Get involved with your kid's life.
And then I want to talk about, since you have been around kids a lot, have you seen any patterns or signs that you can start to tell they're starting to make a turn into the wrong direction? And if so, how do you address it, or how should families potentially address it?
It goes back to the parents. You do see it. Some of the kids that start within several programs that I coach in, they come at 5 years old, and the parents are all gung-ho and are there from they're 5 to about 7. Once they turn 8 or 9, the kid's old enough that he can take care of himself, in their opinion, and even up to 8th grade in high school, he's an independent or she's independent, so they don't care. It goes back to the parents. Parents have to do it, and these kids are seeking. I can't give them a ride, so they're going to get a ride with him. And, well, his parents aren't perfect because his parents used to be former gang members or low-key gang members, but the kids grow up seeing that. And just the comments like, West Side or any kind of gang verbiage they use, the kids start picking it up, and they see there's more love in the hanging out together with them than there's at my house, so why not hang out with them? They're going to take care of me.
So you talked a little bit about the verbiage, then maybe picking up on some verbiage if they're around potentially not the most perfect people. What other signs do you think parents and or family members could see?
The dress, who they hang out with, the kid's attitude, is he being rebellious or does he really want to hang out with these people a lot? Why don't they want to be with me? And a lot of it are parents like, well, if I don't have to deal with them, then it's okay. You can spend the night. Go stay over there. Did you do homework? Yeah, I did it, but not check it and let them go anyways.
So it sounds like really you're just saying the parents can be the route to stop or really allow this to happen.
Correct.
So if there's a child who starts to display some of this with the dress, what they're saying, who they're hanging out with, spending a lot of time away, is there anything you think parents can do to help stop it before it actually gets too far?
They need to stand their ground. Stand their ground. I'll give you an example of a local family here. They adopted a bunch of kids that came from out of our city and some potential drug and gang influence in their life. And they just took them in as foster kids, and now they've had them probably 15 years. I think the oldest one is 15 or 16 now. And they had issues with these kids because there was no structure, nothing really going on for them other than they got what they wanted because the money was there. This family took them in, and right now they're struggling with one of them, but they don't give up on her. They do not give her her way or anything. If she does something that's illegal, they're calling the police. If she does something well, they're rewarding her. But they don't give up on her. And the other ones started, and they've all come around and are doing well. But they don't give up. They don't say, okay, I don't want to deal with this anymore, and I'm done. They're parents. They're holding them accountable. And for those being just foster children, those parents are there every day. People are going to say, well, yeah, as a foster parent, you get paid. The foster parents that I see that get involved in some of their kids' life, they're not there for the money. They have a true passion to take care of these kids.
Do you think once there is a person, let's say later teens, young adult, if they are now into gangs, is there a way that you think that it can be stopped and they could be pulled out of it?
There is. Not only do parents have an involvement, but seeking help from other entities like law enforcement. And we have a Police Explorer Cadet program. Some of the kids in our program are there because they want to be, and some of them are because parents are not liking which way their kids are going, and they're forcing the kids to come into this program. Our goal with the Police and Cadet program is not to teach them how to be police officers, but teach them how to be good citizens.
Responsibility,
Responsibility and
respectfulness.
Corporal Madrigal, last year we held the junior academy, and it was a waiting list. People want to come.
Wow. Now, I know you also talked about earlier that, especially, I would assume some of these older adult gang members, like they're not going to get out unless they want to get out, unless they actually have something that happens to them. Mike Salazar talked about that too, that something major happened in him that made him want to change. What can the community and or families do to be there if and or when that happens?
Don't judge them on their past. Understand that everybody makes mistakes. Their mistake might be, I was a gang member, but be there to help them. Don't worry about the past, worry about the future. Let's fix their future. Don't shut the door. Stand your ground, because when you come for help, I'm still not going to let you get away with stuff, but be open-minded. Be ready to help, whatever it takes.
So ultimately, if people missed or tuned out to the majority of our conversation, what is the one takeaway that you want people to know when it comes to breaking this cycle of gang violence?
You need to be involved in your family's life. Don't expect somebody else to fix your family. Police officers can't show up and within 15 minutes solve all your problems. That's about the average time we spend on a call, is about 15 minutes. And people expect us to fix everything in 15 minutes when you've had your relationship with your spouse for 20 years, 10 years, or your kids are 14 or 15, and you've let something go away for so long. Don't expect us to fix it in 15 minutes. We will come and help you and work through it, and we will support you through it, but you need to get involved and you need to be part of the solution. Don't expect somebody else to fix your problems.
Yeah, I think it goes down to don't be afraid to discipline. I know, and then you and I have talked about this before in the past of how we would be disciplined by our parents had we done anything wrong. And I think it goes almost similar to a job. Say if I mess up on my job, my boss is going to be on me like, hey, don't do that. Lesson learned. So same thing with your kids. If they mess up, you got to call them on it. Don't be afraid to discipline, and however you feel you need to discipline your child. Don't be afraid to do that, because once you start calling them on that, on whatever they're doing, something's gonna sink in, hopefully, and they'll be like, okay, I can't do this because now I'm gonna get in trouble. Now they're gonna take Fortnite away from me, or whatever the case may be. So I feel like don't be afraid to discipline your kid, and if you need to talk to the police, then we're here too. I mean, we can go talk to them and do whatever we need to do to try and deter them from going down that route.
There's resources for them on that, like Corporal Madrigal just said, is, stand your ground. You get called at 2:00 in the morning, hey, my daughter didn't show up or my son didn't show back up. Well, what happened? Well, about 8:00 tonight, we got in an argument. She just stormed out of the house and left. Why didn't you call 8:00? Oh, well, she does that all the time. Well, you've let it happen, and this is the new normal, so it's going to keep happening.
Yeah.
So you need to, as soon as that happens and they leave, hey, I need the police here. I need help. We need to bring her back. We need to squash this right now.
So being more proactive about it, not reactive to it.
Correct.
Got it. Is there anything else I didn't ask you that you feel is important for people to know? I want to make sure that we're getting all of the knowledge out of you, because you've been in law enforcement for so long that I feel like there could very well be many things that you know that I didn't ask about.
Get involved. Spend time with your kids. That's the biggest one. Get involved. Spend time with your kids. Sacrifice sometimes. You're trying to save a little extra money so you can have lunch money at work so you can enjoy it. Why not sacrifice that money and use that to spend it with your kids? If it's even just going out to the spray park and buying ice cream or sandwich stuff to just hang out with them there, that goes a lot further than just buying them stuff. hang out with them. Know who your kids are.
Thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate it.
Well, that's going to conclude episode 4 of Breaking the Cycle of Gang Violence. Thank you for joining us. Again, our tip line is open, 661-721-3369. If you have any information about any of our open cases, please give us a call and give us that information. You can remain anonymous. Thank you again for joining us.